You're good. We are live.
We're live now.
Olin, I don't see myself on the screen yet. There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Combat COVID-19 Community Support. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have Stories of Resilience, which we have every Monday night at 6 o'clock with Topical Life podcaster Tiffany Murphy and guest Carrie Faith. So I'm super excited to hear from them. But just a little bit about me. My name is Dawn Creech, and I'm leading up the Combat COVID-19 Community Support effort here in Central Oregon. And who we are is an informal coalition of healthcare providers and other community leaders in Central Oregon. We're producing a series of live stream video events and virtual groups based on caring for you and your family's health during the pandemic. And we are funded by the Central Oregon Health Council. I did want to give a really quick plug for the events we have coming up later this week. On Wednesday at 7:30 at night, we have Table Talk, and the topic of this week is toilet paper. So we have 4 Central Oregon residents that are going to bring humor and hope and stories, all things COVID-19. On Thursday, we have 2 awesome events. The first one's Dr. Pinavari is going to be talking about immunity in COVID-19, which is a really hot topic right now with the new immunity tests coming out, so tune in for that one. And then on Thursday evening, we're going to have 2 behavioral health clinicians from Summit Medical Group, Sierra Gronwald and Lacey Shepard, talk about how to manage feeling depressed during the pandemic. And then on Friday the 17th, we also have sort of everything you're going to need to know about kids and COVID-19 with a fantastic pediatrician, Dr. John Peoples. So we encourage you to check out our Facebook page. Also, we have a YouTube channel. We have a slide up so you can see those, and we're broadcasting tonight to both Facebook and YouTube. Now, before we get started with our guests, we do have a really quick disclaimer. My lawyer insists that we go over, so here we go really quick. This event is provided only for informational and educational purposes. It is not offered as medical advice or medical opinions. You should not treat this event as a substitute for medical advice or care. If you require assistance with any mental health or medical issue, please contact your healthcare provider. We make no guarantees or warranties of any kind, express or implied. Okay, and with that, we're going to get started with Tiffany and Carrie. They're going to go through their conversation this evening, and they have kindly agreed to take any questions from the audience. So if you're on Facebook or YouTube watching this live, go ahead and type in your questions, and we'll save them for the end to pose them to our guests. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tiffany.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Topical Life. Tonight, we come to you live, which I'm super excited about. I have an amazing guest, you guys. Before I get into that, I just want to let you know, I felt like I should share that I showed up to you tonight with a feeling of like, wow, should we all just take a deep breath? Like literally just like, because if you've had the day that I have had, where I have taught a first grader how to use a computer, you will want to take a deep breath. And it's funny because I'm not in a fight or flight position at all, in the sense of like nothing is tragic is happening to me, and yet I feel a lot of stress. And so I can, for all the people out there right now that are feeling just like this weight, or just maybe feelings that you have never had or don't know where to take, you are in a pandemic right now. And I'm talking to myself as I'm talking to you that this is what you're feeling is real. And you need to know that you can feel validation in knowing that whatever you're feeling is real. And I wanted to come to you exactly how I've been today, and that is in workout clothes that I never worked out in, and a face I didn't wash, I've been home all day, and I feel like there's some parts of that day where I've wanted to cry. Um, I did not lose a job. Yeah, my husband's hours are getting cut a little bit, but our kids are healthy. I am healthy. My husband is healthy. Our family's healthy. Really not a lot to complain about. And yet here I am. I do struggle with anxiety. You guys know that I talk about that a lot. And so while I'm introducing Carrie Faith right here, I come in a position of solidarity with those that are struggling and that might feel like they're in a place where they can't even we're going to give advice, and we're going to hear advice, and we're going to embrace your story, and this message is for hope. And that's how we want, this is how we present to you this message. And it can get me emotional. I met Carrie Faith. Carrie, here she is. She's not Sarah Jessica Parker. Okay. She may look like it, but she's not. But we met actually before COVID hit, and I just love who she is and her story, which I have not heard. But the person she is behind her story and what she's become with her life is super inspiring. Carrie, we're going to start with her story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we're going to continue with her story, and then in the end we're going to talk about just some takeaways that you can apply literally tomorrow, literally after you shut down your computer, that I found to be so valuable. And I'm just so, you guys, like, Carrie, thank you for being here. Tell us
Thank
about
you.
yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It really, truly is an honor to be on the Topical Life and simultaneously even serve a greater audience through the Combat COVID-19 on Facebook and YouTube, which I was unexpected. But the more people that I can serve, the happier I will be. And so I think that I'll go dive into that and why that makes me happy later on. But thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Tiffany, for having
Sure.
me on your podcast. So I love that you just came out super real and explained your day today, Tiffany, because I can relate. I have cried today.
You did?
Yes, doing the homeschool within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I
I had to
cried.
text the teacher.
I've had anxiety throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I'd have to say I've had some level of stress, and not necessarily necessary stress, but I would just say there's underlying stress
Sure.
and uncertainty. So thank you for just coming out real and authentic, because I know I can relate with that, and I think everyone that's listening can relate to that.
Sure.
My brand, my business is named Carrie Faith, and it is named Carrie Faith because that is my name. And it is one of faith, hope, and optimism, I would say. Yeah, I haven't always been optimistic. I haven't always been positive, and I have a lifetime of struggles behind my name. And I always shied away from my middle name. I didn't tell anyone my middle name. I despise my middle name. And I don't know why I did that, but I think that it was such a powerful name that was given to me. And I think that I had a strong purpose, and I didn't embrace that till later on in my life. And that's why, as a mindset coach and speaker and author, I help people identify their human strengths and their purpose, because that's how I found more happiness and better health throughout my journey. So did you want me to dive in and start with my story?
Carrie, we want to hear all the things, like why your mess became a message, which is something that you speak about, which a lot of people speak about, but you're doing what you're doing because of something you experienced personally. So yeah, let's like hear the nitty gritty. How did you first realize you had anxiety?
So not only
or
have
depression or the whole thing, or, whatever that looked like for you.
Right. Not only I have two messages. One of them is a mess to a message, and the other one underlying that is that I experienced a lifetime of anxiety. As I mentioned, I was anxious all day, and
Yeah.
a lifetime of depression. And so it took me a long time to really know what to do with that and how to live the healthiest life that I could live and live a happy life despite having depression and anxiety. So my anxiety started from one of my first memories. I was around 3 years old, and I am standing at the front door or near the garage door, and I was just screaming or yelling or crying, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. And yes, I was my parents' misery because I didn't want to get in the car and go to preschool. And what,
You actually, so you remember that? You remember that?
well, I don't remember a lot, but
You
10
remember?
under 10, but I do remember having severe stomach aches as a kid.
Mm, okay.
And I had stomach aches, and I said, I don't want to go to preschool because I have a stomach ache.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go to preschool because I was uncomfortable there. I mean, I have very faint memories of preschool, but I do remember not wanting to go to preschool, feeling uncomfortable when I was there at preschool, and not really engaging a lot or feeling comfortable playing and just being there. Looking back, I now realize that was my social anxiety.
Mm,
I didn't feel comfortable socializing as a natural born introvert. It wasn't really comfortable for me to be in big groups or be in social environments. And this carried with me through, kindergarten. I do remember faint images of me in kindergarten, not feeling connected to people or not playing in big groups or not even wanting to go to kindergarten. Who doesn't want to go to kindergarten, right? And then that carrying through me through grade school and moving in fifth grade and then junior high school. Most people don't like junior high school, but I really didn't like junior high
Okay,
school
so
as
if that
being
happens and you
having
know
that
and you
anxiety and
tell
social anxiety.
what it sounds like.
And then in high school, the first day I went to high school, I was ready to run off to college. So I
Yeah.
always had a plan that I was going to run away to college. And I did. Not necessarily run away, but I was a good student. And I came from a very middle to upper class family. My parents did everything right. My dad was an attorney, so he was a workaholic. He wasn't around as much as maybe I would have liked, but my mom
Okay,
was
it's just
always there for
muted.
me.
If I unmute, is it
And,
gonna cause chaos?
nothing really to complain about.
Okay.
Besides that, I just felt uncomfortable in my own skin and I had stomach aches in most of my upbringing, which turned to headaches. I would say around 8 to 10, I started getting headaches. And then the headaches turned into migraines.
I'm not
yeah.
And
seeing
then
anything through the computer.
it just turned into chronic pain. The migraines and inflammation, all sorts of just, I was a mess. And I'm not perfect
It's
now. I'm still quite a
my
mess. Like I
microphone
told
is
you, I
muted, if
cried
that's okay.
today.
Yeah.
I was anxious today and I was stressed today. I think that we are all, as humans, just trying to figure out life. Now, throw this new lifestyle in the mix, and it's just, pulling out your
So
hairs,
it'll be its
right?
own
So,
replay.
Yeah. Well, I literally pull out my hair right here. Like actually becomes a little hairless because I get anxious, and that is a problem. But it's been there for, I mean, whatever. It's actually it's tattooed right here, believe it or not. Yeah. So I can relate to actual hair pulling. Luckily it is just my eyebrow, but still, yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Yeah.
So I think we could talk about that, the behavioral signs that come up maybe
Sure.
of, dealing with the anxiety of the moment, that we might be doing things that are old habits, or um, nervous energy, because really I've known since a very young age that I was very in tune with
I don't
energy.
see
Mhm.
And that's really what a lot of my work is about, is that energy, and realizing our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings are all energy. And so when we can look at it from an energetic standpoint, we can actually have more control of that. But going back to my story of running away to college, right? I think
Mhm.
that's sort of where I left.
What do you say? Why do you say run away to college? Like, were you just wanting to, like, why that phrase? Like, because, you go to high school. Is it that you were eager to just escape something?
Yes, it
Okay.
was the idea of escapism.
Okay.
So once I hit adolescence, I really realized you get a newfound freedom, right, in life, where your parents start letting go. And it was a newfound freedom. And through adolescence, with my newfound freedom, I probably picked up on coping mechanisms, that more healthy coping mechanisms. And that's sort of what I was talking about, how we could apply it to current day. But
Sure.
I started drinking at a young age. My parents, I think, know about this,
Oh,
but
oh
I think,
boy. Are we outing something here? Are we outing? Are we
well,
outing?
my parents knew about this. I'm not sure to the extent,
Sure.
or I'm not sure they know all the stories behind that. But I did start drinking at a young age, and that's when the escapism started, right? And then the
Yeah.
drinking turned into smoking. They knew about that too, like the smoking cigarettes. That happened around 18, but it started with other illegal substances. And I was just uncomfortable in my own skin ever since I had been in preschool, right? So to
Yeah.
feel more comfortable in my own skin, I picked up on these escapism behaviors, which are very unhealthy. Um, and really going back to my youngest age, is that my parents always told me, from one of my earliest memories, that I was a very difficult child, because I didn't want to go to school. I was a late speaker, so I did have some speech delayed, what is that,
Like,
developmental
yeah.
stages. So I was a very slow talker, as is was my son. So I see that that is partially hereditary, but I had delayed speech, and no babysitter ever wanted to come back to babysit me, because all I did was scream and scream and scream. So I think that I just developed these behaviors, and still was supporting the bad stories from my parents telling me that I was difficult. So I went on through life thinking that I needed to live a life with difficulty, really. And
You basically took that on as your identity, essentially.
yes.
Yeah.
So it was my identity. And when I realized later on in life that I could completely shift my identity, I could completely shift my beliefs, I could completely shift my behavior and be more in control of my own destiny, of my own stories,
Yeah.
because I didn't have to fulfill the stories that my parents were telling me. But a lot of us don't realize that. A lot of us don't realize how our beliefs or our old stories or our old behaviors show up later on in life. And that's why a lot of people go to the professionals, right? The therapist, because that's where it gets um, uncovered.
Yeah.
And I come from a family that had mental health or mental illness in my past generations.
Mhm.
So not
Did your
necessarily
parents not? Did your parents, I mean,
my parents didn't suffer anxiety or depression that I know about,
got it.
but their parents did.
Mm,
And even my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, has schizophrenia.
mm,
So you would think that maybe some of those signs as a child would show up, but nonetheless, it wasn't ever talked about. It wasn't ever brought into attention. It wasn't ever a subject matter about mental health or about having anxiety or depression because I was born in the 70s, not to date myself, but I'm going to. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it wasn't something that my family wanted to talk about. And it wasn't something that a lot of people wanted to talk about, even now, right? We're still, do see the paradigm shift happening, thank goodness. But it was definitely a stigma in the 80s
yeah.
and 90s. And it was something that my parents never wanted to bring attention to, maybe. I'm not quite sure. And I don't blame my parents because you don't know what you don't know. And so I went to college. And yes, I said running off to college because I just knew I was a little bit different. And now I know that being different is something to really embrace, right?
Mhm.
And I just had a different perspective than those people that were around me, I feel like. And I wanted to experience a different lifestyle, as I do now. That's what brought me to Oregon. I just am obsessed with experiencing life and understanding perspectives and um, meeting different people in different places because even though we're all alike, we as many perspectives as there are in the world or as many people as there are in the world, there are that many different perspectives, and I've just been obsessed with learning about perspective.
Yeah.
So I went off to college at University of Colorado. I'm originally from San Diego, California, and I didn't know how good I had it in San Diego, California, so I had to definitely leave to realize what a good life I had.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, when I went running off to school at 18, everything came, full circle, and it all kind of looked me in the face, the anxiety and the depression. And I met a guy my sophomore year, and within a few weeks, he started talking to me about his feelings and his emotions and his experiences in high school with being on medication and addictions and behaviors and all sorts of things. And that's when like the light bulb went off. Like, oh my gosh, everything that he's telling me about, I have been experiencing my whole life. And at that moment, I basically self diagnosed myself being depressed. And I
Wow.
later, a few months later, went to a therapist. So that is a short story of my experience with anxiety and how I finally realized it. It was through listening to someone else that had the exact feelings and thoughts and emotions as I did. But there was never a term that was brought to my attention.
Yeah. So those years, I mean, because that's a long time. I mean, obviously you felt, in some sense, you always felt different. Did you feel validated as soon as you heard his story and then you went and got help? And then, I mean, was it like a whole new world opened up for you in a way? Because it's like, oh, wait, I'm actually kind of normal. Like I have this thing, yeah, that I'm going through and I'm suffering from, and I can get on meds and I can get support and I'm fine. Like, or like for me, I had, like, so you were like, did you feel validation is what I'm asking? Because for me, when I found out I had anxiety and depression, it was almost kind of like something put on me. Like, oh, you have this. So like my identity was kind of the opposite. Like I took that on as my identity for sure when I found out I had that. For you, it sounds like it was more, oh, thank God I figured it out. Like what was it for you?
Well, at that point, that's a good question. At that point, I wouldn't say that I was validated necessarily, but I felt like my feelings or my whole life was explained in one word.
Wow.
Depression. So it was almost somewhat of a relief, although it wasn't validated because this was 1996 that I met this gentleman and I started dating him, and who had severe depression as well and was on meds. So it wasn't like, oh yay, it wasn't something to really celebrate because it was still like a hush hush. There
Oh,
was still pain, I think, with my parents and their parents passed, especially with my grandfather that had schizophrenia. There was still amount of shame and don't admit that you are depressed.
fear. Yeah, fear and shame.
Yes. So it was fast forward a few months later, and it was my second semester of sophomore year, and I I signed up for an elective, and it was called meditation. So I was in Boulder in Colorado, very non-traditional, I would say,
Yeah.
environment, especially in the 90s. So Boulder was still a little bit stuck in the 60s, and it was very new age, I would say, hippie. And so I don't know if colleges now have meditation courses, but I still have the book from that class. It was called Meditation.
Oh, there you
And
go.
I had a guest speaker in that class come in. And so this is why I know that speaking is so powerful. So the guest speaker came in and had a guided meditation. And it was that was another one of those aha moments because it integrated a sense of alternatives to find peace and ease
Hmm.
through spirituality, and it was a therapist, someone that I called up within hours of her guest speaking so I could book an appointment with her because something just spoke to me in her guided meditation. And my name is not really religious based, and that's why I have my name as my brand, because it is a spiritual energy that I know that I have, that I finally got in touch with through that meditation course.
Yeah. So that was the start of your new path of embracing and starting the path which has gotten you to today of using that energy and a mindset to use those as tools to, you know, get healthy, get to where you want to be. For some people, it's to get out of bed. I mean, like, you prep yourself for these kind of things, and day to day to be successful in your mind. So that's why I love, like, when I asked you, okay, so how do I label you? You said you're a mindset coach. And that was like, oh, it was just, I immediately already felt just relief, honestly, because it is our mind that really does take over. And I don't care what religion you are. It's like, you really do have the ability to control that. And I mean, do you mind me asking, do you take medication now?
So once I was actually diagnosed with depression, I
Mhm.
spent, gosh, the next 10 years of my life basically barely getting out of bed.
Mm.
So I don't wish that upon anyone, but it was my identity. So um
Was it the headaches that were keeping you in bed, or was it the no motivation
it was
or
the
anxiety?
depression. The
Okay.
depression was so painful. Those people that have had depression, I don't wish it upon anyone
Mhm.
because
Neither.
it is way more painful, I believe, than any physical pain that I've ever experienced. So it took me a long ways to get from that first diagnosis of depression to where I am. But
Yeah.
I was medicated at 20. I no longer do take medication. But was that your original question about?
Yeah, I was just more curious, like kind of backtracking and going forward. But yeah, I kind of wanted to know if medication was part of your journey as far as getting to this point right now.
Yes.
And that's always kind of a question to ask in a sense, because a lot of people, are totally comfortable with meds. Some people are totally not comfortable with meds. And so it's just kind of interesting to kind of have that like, does that help you? I personally do take meds. I'll never not take meds. But that's a journey for everybody. So that's why I asked that. Like, that's a whole thinking of it in and of itself, in my opinion. But I was just curious.
Medication was definitely my saving grace in the sense of when I couldn't get out of bed, when I didn't know how to cope with the anxiety, when I didn't know how to get myself out of bed or have a job and be able to maintain that job, and being able to just do the normal things that normal people do, right?
Yeah.
Is
Right.
the day-to-day structure was definitely assisted with medication. But I was overly medicated, I believe, in the sense of medication has come such a long way, right? In the
Yeah.
past 20 years. Like I said, that was 1996, 97, I believe, when I started taking medication. So that was, over 20 years ago. So I took medication until I got pregnant with my firstborn child. And at that point, I think there was still a lot of things that weren't as well understood now. So don't know if I stopped taking medication when I found out I was pregnant, but I was one of those types that was on and off medication because one, my depression is very seasonal. And I did not see a big help for me personally. With medication, I probably didn't have the right dosage, or I didn't have the right type, or some depression I don't think is 100% treatable. With some people don't respond to the medication, so that is not up to me. That is a professional. But
Yeah, that's
personally,
right. I remember you saying, yeah, you did not respond to the medication. It didn't help you. That's right. And that's when I asked you, do you have ADD? Like, no, because I heard somewhere where if you have ADD or something, like, obviously not a professional here, which is why it's like I can just say this, which is awesome. But it's like no lawyer's going to come after me. That that ADD, like, I've heard people say that, oh yeah, I have ADD and I tried depression medication and somehow like the SSRIs interact with the la 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 la.
that's so funny because I know you told me that when we were having a conversation
Yeah.
in the past, that yes, I do have ADD.
I hope that I just outed you that way.
I've never been diagnosed with ADD,
Self-diagnosed.
but I know
Yeah.
that I do have ADD. I'm not hyperactive, but I have never worked a 9 to 5. Well, maybe for like a summer job, but I've never worked a 9 to 5 job. Yes, I've gone all these years without working a 9 to 5 job, and I've
Yeah.
survived.
Yeah.
I have worked. I've just worked alternative, not the normal average, I would say, career path. But I don't think that my life was an average path to many. And um, so I stopped going to college at just actually it was about the month I turned 21. I was so depressed in college. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do the normal things that college students did. I still had severe social anxiety. So I didn't feel comfortable socializing all the time. I mean, I always had friends, but it was more on an intimate level. So, but the depression was so overpowering that I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't be the average college student and the get the good grades like I did in high school because I was just so depressed. So, with the advice and encouragement from my parents who were supporting me at the time, they suggested I take a break from college.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And I think a lot of that is where my shame came into play because
Yeah.
not only was it like I was depressed and I had the anxiety, but I also felt like a failure from stopping going to school. And that was there with me for a really long time, that sense of incompleteness, that sense of failure, and mixed with the depression and anxiety. It's been a really long journey, but nonetheless, there is a turning point to my story on how I got from being so sick where I couldn't get out of bed to just never having enough time in the day to do everything that I want to do so that I can serve people.
So you went from college, so you were at home dealing with the shame. You're 21. Um, you know, I feel like I should ask this question just for shits and giggles. But what is it like when people say like I just didn't get out of bed? I know what that looks like for me, but I just feel like, can you give me an example? I feel like because we're in this combat COVID-19 where people that have never experienced anxiety are experiencing it and maybe have struggled a little bit with anxiety and depression, but didn't really realize that they were. And then, or people that are struggling with it are just facing, I know what my issues look like. And I can be very open about what that looks like for me, but would you mind describing like maybe what a day looks like for you when you say you were always in bed? Like to somebody
Well,
that, yeah, like what did that look like? Like, was it like, okay, I got up and I used the restroom, I ate something and I went back to bed? Or was it constantly talking to yourself? Let me just back up here. Okay. Anyone who has experienced depression in bed are literally some of the most strongest people you will ever meet. And that I can say in complete authority in that way because I am that person. Like I get it. I've experienced it and I know that I'm strong and I know that I'm mentally strong and the people like Carrie who have taken their life from that and excelled in ways that are helping other people. I mean, we're going to talk about that, but just describing to someone who's never experienced that, I think it's important to touch on, if you don't mind, like what did a day look like during that time?
well, honestly, I feel like I want to black out those days, so I'm not quite sure I recall them 100%, right?
Yeah.
We always want to remember the good days instead of the bad
Yeah,
days.
it's true.
But and having depression throughout my life, I just think a lot of it was inconsistent sleep patterns, which I know that you've had on this combat COVID-19 has talked a lot about the sleep disturbances and sleep patterns, but it was a lot of inconsistent sleep. So I would say, you wake up at 8, you fall back asleep. You wake up at 9, you fall back asleep. You wake up at 10, you fall back to sleep. And you just keep doing that. And because with my depression is very seasonal, I would say 6 months out of the year, throughout my 20s, I would be pretty depressed. And then spring would come and I would have so much more energy. So I know there's a lot of support for each and every type of depression, but that's what my depression looked like. And so, in the shortest days out of the year, which in North America, where most people are watching, right? It's October, November, December, January
January. Yeah.
is when it really hits. And I have learned to manage that in a sense and shortening that period, but I still have that not wanting to get out of bed. And it looks like you just wake up and then you feel those bad feelings, you have bad thoughts, like, I don't want to do anything today. I just want to stay here. I don't want to socialize. I don't want to go to work, whatever it happens to be. It's just ruminating about negative thoughts, your negative feelings, and your negative emotions. It's just zero energy. You don't have energy to do anything, not even really wanting to get out of bed to eat, perhaps. This is what mine looked like.
Yeah.
And crying a lot, just crying for no really apparent reason. And just wishing that there were better days, that I had more meaning and purpose to my life, or meaning and purpose to my day, or just, it's just hopelessness. It's just helplessness. You don't feel like anything is really going to make, I didn't really feel like anything was going to make me feel better. So throughout that, I was looking for happiness. That it was my number one goal from the first time I was diagnosed with depression. It was my number one goal in life, is to find happiness. And I went about it in every single wrong way that any professional would tell you to do it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Through thinking, if I move here, I'm going to be happy. If I do this, I'm going to be happy. People think if I get a car, I'm going to be happy. If I get the perfect job, I'm going to be happy. If I meet the perfect person, I'm going to be happy. I think that was where I was, just thinking that if X happens, then I'm going to get to Z, which is happiness.
Yeah. And that didn't quite happen, right? Like that.
No, I moved, let's say, I moved and it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
I would do, I don't
Like
really
pour
know. It
yourself into certain
wasn't,
things.
it was a lot of self coping, I would say, at
Mm.
the same time. It was a lot of doing the wrong behaviors, like drinking or smoking or drugs, reckless behavior. I mean, I'm going to keep this PG, but it was a lot of reckless behavior in my 20s. Like, a lot of young people think they're indestructible, but I was never attempted suicide, but I never really wanted to live throughout that time that I had such bad depression. So I never thought I was going to live a day past 30, because I just was
Wow.
really reckless.
Wow.
So take you up to more modern day. Every day and every year after 30, now that I'm 40 something, is like borrowed time, I feel like. And so it wasn't until I turned 30, I realized, oh my God, I made it to 30. Now I must do something else, because I never thought I was going to be here. And then giving birth to my firstborn child was really the turning point. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I can no longer just barely survive,
Yeah.
because another being was dependent on me to grow and thrive.
Sure.
And at that point, I realized I can't be the quote depressed person that I identified with my entire life, because it wasn't going to be of service to my child. And that really was the turning point.
Yeah, those dependents, man, they really depend on you in every single way. Every single way, don't they?
And they make me cry for different reasons now.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Sure. Yes, it's a purpose in and of itself, for sure. And that's like 8 million different podcasts episodes about that. But getting to where you are today, as far as like having the children, and then now you're helping people with their minds, like your job, your book is out, or it's out this Friday.
yes.
Yeah. Pillars to Positivity. We'll have all the links to that. But and I'll put that out on Friday, I guess. So I can just shoot that out or whatever. This would be a really good time to read something like that, I think. but essentially depression became your purpose, switching
Yes.
that to that. So let's walk through that now, where you're like, okay, I'm not going to identify that as myself as in it's keeping me down. I'm going to use it to actually to propel me forward. Let's start with that, because you have some seriously amazing tips, which I think we all definitely need to hear right now. So where should we start?
So the pain to the purpose is,
Yeah.
now I realize I always knew that I was experiencing that pain to help other people.
Yeah.
And to inspire other people. And I made the shift when I started setting goals for myself. And that's why I'm really passionate about goal setting for myself and others. But finding that deeper meaning, and I found the power of positivity despite my dad talking about it, my everyone around me talking about gratitude and talking about positivity. And it doesn't mean that you have to be positive 100% of the time. It's quite the contrary. It's about feeling bad, feeling negative, feeling anxious or depressed, and really having the hope and having the faith and having the control to produce a positive outcome out of any type of negative situation. And so that's when I went back to school finally at age 39, just to complete the story. And at that time, I took an elective called positive psychology. And the positive psychology was just, it was the light bulb that went off again. It was, what I was missing, because I was all along focusing on what I wasn't doing good, when all I had to do was like slightly shift my binoculars to what I did that was really good.
Yeah.
And that's when I just had another aha moment. Like, it is not about doing the things that I do poorly. Where focus goes, energy flows. So it's the power of where we focus is really what more of what we're going to create. And so for me, when I focus on I'm anxious or I'm depressed, I feel more of that. When I focus on my purpose, which I've identified is to inspire people, is when I feel the energy, is when I feel like I have gas in my tank to drive it forward. So that is how I term actually positive mindset. It is about managing the internal negative dialogue and allowing that to have more control of the outcome.
You had mentioned the ABCs of positivity. What is that?
So it is a theory based on Snyder's hope theory, and one of the leaders in positive psychology, Martin Seligman, has also implemented a play on the hope theory. And it is about adversity, A plus B equals C. So adversity plus belief equals your consequence, or consequence can also be termed like your result or your outcome. So really it is about the belief behind your adversity that is going to create your C, consequence, result, outcome, feeling, energy, whatever that may be. So
Okay, wait, let's pause that for a second, because let's just take a literal example. Like today, I come to you. It was a hard day for me. So A would be adversity, which is I don't want to homeschool. It's one of my greatest fears, honestly. And here I am. Okay, adversity, that's adverse, right? And then belief. I believe, okay, first of all, it's like I don't want to. And then I guess if I thought about it deeper, it'd be like, I'm really not going to be good at this. Okay. So then the consequence is that my output is kind of crappy. I guess.
that's your C, right?
How was that? How is that ABC for you?
Well, that's perfect. But right
Okay.
there, your B is that you're not going to be good at it, right?
Right. It all goes wrong with the B, doesn't it? That
It
B.
does.
It's the B
And
word. Oh,
it's the B. When people realize how powerful not only the B, which is the belief, but I also sometimes implement a B as in the behavior. But that's for another episode. So the belief is creating your crappy feeling, right?
Yeah.
So what if, how else could you term, I'm not going to be good at this? What about if you say,
They're like, no, this is the term. They're lucky I'm doing this. They're lucky I'm sitting down with him doing this, because reality is they are lucky that they have someone in their life that can sit down and do this with them, because I'm thinking about all the parents that can't. And, if they walk away with learning a new word, well, they won the day. I won the day, for crying out loud. I think one thing I wanted to touch on too is that you've said, and I'm kind of like this too, is that a lot of people that struggle with anxiety and depression are actually perfectionists. And that has a huge implication to outcome, because your belief in, well, that wasn't what I wanted. That's why I say, like, people that are, really depressed and have anxiety, they're actually really super successful. It's just the way they go about doing it and believing what they believe. So I'm new to that stage. Honestly, I'm new to this stage in my journey, for sure. And even doing this podcast, honestly, the belief system of what the outcome, So yeah, I felt like it was important to just kind of like do a little example.
well, I love that you brought up the perfectionism, because when you were at the B and you were thinking of a new belief that you could replace that with. And I was thinking to give you a B would be a new belief was, I might not be perfect at this, but right. Or I might be doing it imperfectly, but at least they have me there to give them support. I don't think, and for me, I am a recovering perfectionist. So a lot of that is perfectionism shows up because of fear. And really, that's what drives all human behavior, is that fear, whether it is something big, fearful, or small, fearful. Like maybe you're fearful of being crappy at it. And so you were telling yourself, I'm going to be crappy at this. But really, you don't have to be good at it. You just have to try. You just have to realize it's not the perfect situation, but you're in a perfect, you have a perfect opportunity where you're not, on the first line you're not a first responder. You're not called to be outside of the home. You're maybe not also having to be on the phone all day or on Zoom calls all day, that you can be there with your
Well, that's
kid.
the thing, is I feel like I should be perfect at it because I don't have those things to do. So that's where I get like down on myself a little bit, because it's like, oh, you should be able to do this because you don't have those things to have to deal with. So it logically has to make sense to me. Like if you told me I have to be on the phone 7 hours a day, well, obviously in my logical mind, I'm thinking, well, they obviously can't homeschool their kid because they're, and obviously anyone who's listening, this applies to all jobs, all this, all that. I mean, we're just using this as a small example, big example to me, but just, like, that's where the perfectionism comes in with me. I'm hard on myself because I do have the opportunity to do this. And because I've been given the opportunity, I'm wasting it by not being good at it. So,
well, I wouldn't say wasting, but I will take or the listeners through a little bit of how you can evaluate the situation, how you can reframe it.
okay.
Because that's really where I have found a lot of self-help for myself is through reframing. So the A is adversity, like homeschooling. The B is the belief, perhaps I'm going to be crappy at this, or I'm not going to be perfect. And so the C is you feel crappy. But we don't want to feel crappy, right? You deserve to feel great. You deserve to be at least content or happy, and as everyone does. And so if you're not feeling if you're not feeling 100%, what I do is move on to the D, which is
Oh, there's a
detach.
D. There's a D
There is
word?
a D. I'm going
Oh,
to take
okay.
you all the way through the G to the G
Okay.
quickly, because I know we're coming up at the top of the hour. But if anyone's listening, maybe they can go through from A to G. So the D is detach or disengage from that feeling, because really our feelings don't define us, right?
Mhm.
Just because you feel crappy doesn't mean you are crappy. So take the feeling of crappy. I say put it in a box, right? Box it up, put a bow on it, wrap it up, and then set it like right next to you.
Give it to someone
And
for
so,
Christmas.
yes, just like Christmas. Really, it is the gift. Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, disengage and detach from it. And then once it's right there next to you, or across the room, or in another room, or even across the street, right?
Yeah.
Evaluate it, which you did, you did that on your own. Evaluate that feeling. And then move on to that's the E. The F is frame or reframe how that belief could be more to your advantage. So reframing is just using different words to describe, right? Which you did. What did you use?
To reframe.
The belief, which I'm going to be crappy. You said,
Oh, I'm like, well, I'm doing the best I can.
yes,
Um, Given the fact that I didn't really want to homeschool. Like, it's not my thing. It's not my thing.
yes. And we're all just doing the best we can. So that is the F. That's the frame. You're going to frame it that you're doing the best you can. So am I. I just have to keep reminding myself all throughout the day, I'm doing the best I can. Everyone's just doing the best they can. And to move on to having even a more elevated feeling, move on to the G, which is gratitude.
Mm,
Gratitude can be a cliche, but it really is one of the highest frequency um, energies that you can create is gratitude. Like you said, you have an opportunity to be there. You're very grateful that you're not pulled away, even though there can be maybe, bad feelings associated to that. We really are grateful that we're healthy. If you're at home with your kids, you have the opportunity to be there. Whatever it is, if you're having a hard time with reframing a belief or a feeling, move on to gratitude and just keep changing the words until you feel good and create that consequential good feeling.
we do have something on our fridge that gratitude changes attitude, that kind of thing. And that does help. I think the weight of carrying yourself and carrying your kids' issues with that is makes things difficult that way. But example, man, if even if I'm not teaching them, if it or those around me or anything like that, being an example, they do see that more than they actually see the product of what you're teaching them. So I do agree with that. I think that's powerful. I think it's so powerful. um yeah, it's interesting because me being a believer in Christ and you saying that gratitude is the highest frequency, like that's so interesting, that energy that actually scientifically lines up. I don't know, I think that's pretty powerful. I think it's powerful for a lot of people with different religions and faith and all that kind of stuff, for sure. I think that's awesome.
So,
But
gratitude and
yeah.
love are one of the highest frequency energies that we can create. It's scientifically proven. And so, even I would say, if and when you don't feel good, it's just shower your kids with love,
Yeah.
shower yourself with love. And besides the gratitude, because our kids, ourself, we all just need that love and that comfort more than
Mhm.
anything. And
Yeah.
that's what they're going to remember. They're going to remember your love as a mom. that you were there for them more than anything that they're going to learn, in school. So it's really put the weight. We have the opportunity to put the weight where we want it and put the
Yeah.
focus on where we want it. And so when it can be love and gratitude, then we will produce more of that. And like you said, kids do what we do more than they do what we say.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Are you listening to kids? Are you listening to that? I forget my kids are actually listening to this right now. So that's funny. Yeah, I love everything you're saying. So in your
Tiffany,
book,
we did get a hi in the comments.
Okay. So should we start to do we have questions? Let's do questions. Wait, what did you say?
We got an hi mom in the comments.
Oh,
probably aimed at you. So I wanted to pass that along.
Hi, child. Hi, child.
So far, we have not received any questions from our viewers, but we have gotten a few like, oh, this is so good comments, which is great. I think if people were listening along.
Yeah. So so I wanted to mention too, do you talk about in your book real quick, because I think like with people right now, like specifically just without jobs, without like in survival mode, I particularly do really well in survival mode, which is why this is so hard for me right now, because I usually do really well in fight or flight. And so it's interesting for me to open up to like with anyone who's an entrepreneur or anyone that is just like, this is obviously not a small business situation working for you. It's like you're in a hard survival spot. You particularly also talk about, just through your workshops and this kind of stuff, the three stages of like struggling, surviving, and then thriving, like those three categories you've mentioned before. And just, do you talk about that in your book, or do you do that through workshops, or, for anyone, do you have a quick word for people that are entrepreneurs or people that are struggling with their job, just what they could do now to kind of shift the crisis in their mind right now?
Well, I think I touch upon the 3 stages in more personal development about struggling, surviving, and then thriving. But I think situationally, we all are in a struggle survival mode right now with the COVID-19.
Yeah.
And even those that maybe previously were, doing the best they could in their life or thriving in their business, it's, I even find myself in leaning back on maybe bad behaviors, like the inconsistent sleeping or the bad eating habits, eating too much sugar, or just know that that is your body sort of in the fight or flight, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people are either lost their job or maybe have fear that they're going to have a job in the future. And because I've trained my mind to really reframe any situation, because that's how I have found myself to be the happiest I can be. Like, now is the most opportunistic time. I know it doesn't feel like it for some people, but it's just this, I want to give this ounce of hope that we are all in a calibration mode. We're all recalibrating. And especially if you've lost your job, it is so important, I feel like, to do the things that one, we're really naturally good at, to something that we're super passionate about, and that is, I don't term to our purpose or have a deeper meaning in our life, because there are studies and studies when asking people, what is the most important part of your life when you come to the end of your life, right?
Yeah.
And it really is, how did I make a contribution? And what did I do that was meaningful in my life? And the way that someone's going to find that is by applying why they're here on this earth, or whatever you believe religiously. I believe we're all here for a reason, and we're all good at some things. And when we do more of those, we're going to feel happier, we're going to feel healthier, we're going to feel aligned, and we're going to feel like we're thriving. We're going to wake up energized, and we're not going to want to go to bed at night because it's something that you really want to do, whether it is painting or write a book or um, photography, whatever it is that you really love to do. We're at this time where you can do that, and you could actually make a living from it too.
Yeah.
And so I do have this unique gift also to see the beauty in people and to realize their human strengths. There are assessments for that, but to realize their value in the world and why they're here. And so I just want to inspire people to realize that you can do your passion. You can do what you've always wanted to do, because what you've done in the past might not be, you might not be able to do that in the future.
Yeah.
And even if you can in your job or your career, why not do something that you want to do in retirement now
Yeah.
and be happy and healthier while you're doing it?
That's awesome. Carrie, I love hearing you talk about all this stuff. You're just a wealth of information, and positivity, shall I say. I appreciate your words, and, you be opening up about how you got to this point, as well. And, wrapping up, I just, are there any are there any questions before I wrap up? No. Okay. So just in closing, Carrie is reachable. I'll have her website and that kind of stuff if you need some guidance. I think one thing that, just ending, is that now is an opportunity for you to change things up. And what the world is telling you right now is that you have to, because we're all, we're used to controlling our environment, and now that environment is trying to control us. And so we're going to take that and try to control it again. And we're going to reframe what is happening to us to reframe it positively. And I think we're kind of all in that in-between stage where it's just like, what is happening, and what am I going to do to move forward? So, Carrie, thank you for your words and your time. We all appreciate it. And we'll post everything. Those who are new to this Topical Life, you can subscribe on Instagram. I have a Facebook page. We will post those as well, so you can just click right to it. But there are lots of stories and people's life testimonies, and to help you through this time and anytime down the road. So anyway, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitched, I don't know what other, Podbean, that's another one. They're all out there. I'm all out there. So anyway, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Well, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Tiffany and Carrie for joining us tonight on Combat COVID-19 and sharing your personal stories and stories of hope and how we're all dealing with our health and our mental health in the pandemic. We did have a couple comments from viewers that I thought might close us out. So first of all, Judy says, this has been so helpful for me. Thank you so much. And then I thought this comment was just a great one to sign us off, which is, get out and be in the fresh air with your family safely. And with that, thank you again, and please join us. Our next live event is Wednesday, and then we have 2 live events on Thursday and another one on Friday to close out the week. So thank you for joining us, and have a nice evening.